I don't like fame anymore. I mean, I was comfortable with it when I was younger, and I would go to the opening of wallets, and it's different when you're young. I'm 50.
The friendship between Princess Diana and Elton John was a rare and beautiful connection built on mutual understanding and a shared desire to make a difference in the world. While their public bond brought moments of joy and camaraderie, their private struggles often mirrored one another in ways the world could never imagine. From their spontaneous first dance to the heartbreak of their estrangement and the tragic reconciliation that came too late, their story is one of loyalty, resilience, and the enduring impact of one woman's legacy. Through triumph and tragedy, their connection not only shaped their lives but also left an indelible mark on history. Everything started at Prince Andrew's 21st birthday party in 1981, which was a big event meant to celebrate family wealth. There were sparkling chandeliers and the sound of high-class talk in the ballroom, but the atmosphere was painfully stiff. Guests followed the rules, practiced their smiles, and planned their moves. Diana was beautiful and young, only a few weeks away from marrying Prince Charles, but she was also a young woman dealing with the huge expectations that came with her new role. Even though she seemed calm at the time, Elton John was already a worldwide star, so he stood out from the stiff royal crowd because he was known for wearing crazy clothes and having a big personality. He felt suffocated there. He was present out of respect for his ties to the royal family, but he couldn't help but wish for a funny moment. Diana then walked up to him with a playful look in her eyes. As the band started to play a Happy Charleston, Diana reached out her hand to Elton, shocking everyone in the room. What came next was magic. They danced and laughed as if they were the only ones there. When they got on the floor, their spontaneity broke up the order of the evening, making people look at them with either amusement or disapproval. Diana saw it as a moment of freedom, a short break from the rules of royal life. To Elton, it was a lesson that happiness and connection could be found in the most unexpected places. From that point on, they became very close friends. They bonded over their shared love for life's silly moments and found comfort in each other's company. Diana was still getting used to being in the public eye, but she felt that Elton understood the stresses of fame. Meanwhile, Elton respected Diana's kindness and her ability to connect with people on a deep level, despite her royal status. But they weren't just friends because they laughed and had fun together. Both of them carried emotional wounds that few people could understand. Diana was struggling to come to terms with the reality of her engagement to Charles. Their relationship had been troubled from the start, filled with emotional distance and misunderstandings. The fairy tale she had been promised was increasingly feeling like a golden cage. Elton, on the other hand, was dealing with personal demons, including drug abuse and the crushing pressures of fame. Over the next few years, they grew even closer. They often spoke on the phone late at night, and Diana would call Elton to confide in him about her troubles. She was honest about her fears, frustrations, and struggles with bulimia, which had been fueled by the unrealistic expectations imposed by the media and the royal family. Elton listened without judgment, offering her the rare gift of understanding and empathy. The world expected him to be perfect all the time, so he understood what it was like to feel trapped by expectations. Their conversations were more than just exchanges of support. They were deeply personal. Elton saw in Diana a reflection of his own vulnerabilities, and their friendship became a source of salvation for both of them. She was one of the only people who could see through his flamboyant stage persona to the real man beneath. Diana, in turn, found someone who truly listened to her, not as a princess, but as a person struggling to find her place in a world that could be unforgiving. Their relationship grew stronger in the public eye. Whether attending charity events or glamorous parties, their bond was evident whenever they were together. However, their friendship was far more complex than the smiles and waves suggested. Diana's life was becoming increasingly difficult. Her marriage to Charles was unraveling, her mental health struggles were intensifying, and the weight of being a princess was becoming unbearable. Despite everything, she found strength in her friendship with Elton. He was one of the few people who truly understood her, providing her with a sense of stability she had been searching for all along. But as their bond deepened, external pressures also grew. Diana's increasing fame and her willingness to defy royal traditions were causing tension in her marriage and within the royal family as a whole. Meanwhile, Elton had his own struggles. The 1980s had been a tumultuous time for him, as he battled drug addiction and the pressures of maintaining his public image. Yet, through it all, his friendship with Diana remained a bright light in a dark period. As the decade drew to a close, their friendship underscored the importance of human connection, even in the face of adversity. Diana had become a global icon for her humanitarian work and her ability to connect with ordinary people. Despite his struggles, Elton continued to be one of the most influential artists of his time. Together, they seemed unstoppable, their bond unbreakable. But beneath the surface, the pressures of their individual lives were mounting, and cracks in their friendship began to form. They had already endured challenges, but they had no way of knowing that the most painful trials were yet to come. As Diana's life went from being fun after her fairy tale wedding to being complicated because she was a princess, her relationship with Elton grew stronger. By the mid-1980s, Diana was no longer the young woman with wide eyes who stepped into a magical world. She was a worldwide icon, respected for her poise and kindness, but she was also going through a lot of personal problems. She felt the pressure of what the royal family expected of her, and it was getting harder and harder to hide the cracks in her marriage to Charles. For Elton, Diana's rise to fame reminded him of some of his own times when people loved him. He knew how hard it was to be in the public eye, where everyone watched your every move and every mistake was made worse. Their friendship grew out of times when they both felt vulnerable, which made their bond even stronger. They often made jokes about how silly their big-screen parts were, seeing each other as a rare chance to drop their public personas and just be themselves. But behind the scenes, Diana's problems were getting worse. At the time, her fight with bulimia was a closely kept secret, but it showed how much pressure she felt to be perfect. During late-night phone calls, she told Elton about her worries and anger that she couldn't show to people inside the palace walls. For Diana, these honest conversations were a lifesaver and a way to get away from the loneliness that came with being a princess. It was also important for Elton, who was dealing with his own issues with drugs and mental health, that they were connected. It was a friendship based on understanding and unwavering support for each other. By the late 1980s, Diana's work with charities was making her even more famous. People's views on the Queen were changing because she went to hospitals, spoke out against AIDS, and could connect with people from all walks of life. Elton respected her bravery and compassion, and he often spoke out in support of her causes. He saw her as more than just a princess. He saw her as a good person in a world where people don't care about anything. Even so, their friendship had its ups and downs. As Diana's fame grew, so did the problems in her marriage and in the royal family. Charles was raised in the traditionalist style of the royalty, so it was hard for him to understand how Diana's public warmth fit with the quiet image that was expected of the royal family. Even at events meant to promote his work, she was more well-known than he was. This imbalance made things difficult in Diana's marriage and with her friends as well. With his flashy style and strong political views, Elton became a source of disagreement. Others in the royal family thought their relationship could be troublesome, even though he admired Diana's desire to question the status quo. In the 1980s, AIDS was still seen as a very taboo topic, so Elton's work to bring attention to it was both new and controversial. Diana shared Elton's concern for underrepresented groups, and she was drawn to his confidence, even though it went against the traditional view of royalty. A project that was important to Elton put a lot of stress on their bond. He was making a coffee table book with pictures of famous people, with proceeds going to his AIDS foundation. Diana had decided to write the introduction because she felt strongly about the cause. This act would have brought a lot of attention to the project. Elton was thrilled because he knew that her participation would give a problem that many people still didn't want to talk about more credibility and compassion. But just as the idea was picking up speed, Diana suddenly stopped supporting it. Elton was shocked and hurt by her choice, which was allegedly influenced by Charles and other royal advisors. The sudden breakup felt like a betrayal to the man who had been by her side through her worst times. He knew Diana was under a lot of stress, but it hurt him so much to lose her support on an issue that was so important to him. Diana felt the same way about her choice to step back. She felt torn a lot of the time because she had to balance her duty to the royal family with her love for Elton. She pulled away not because she felt bad about Elton, but because the palace was getting more and more controlling over her life. The impact was still big, though. They stopped calling each other as often as they used to, and Elton could feel the void that Diana's loss left in his life. The fallout made things hard for both of them. Diana's personal problems kept getting worse, like her marriage falling apart and the press never stopping to look at her. Elton was also going through his own problems. He was having a hard time figuring out how to balance his pain over their breakup with his understanding of the stress she was under. Their relationship, which used to bring them comfort, now felt like another thing that had to give way because of the strict royal system. They lived their lives in parallel but different ways. During the early 1990s, Diana's work as an advocate continued to make headlines, especially her attempts to make AIDS less of a taboo subject and her groundbreaking trip to Angola to bring attention to landmines. Elton, on the other hand, put his energy into music and activism, using his fame to call for more understanding and kindness. Even though they were far apart, there were still signs of their link. Elton often said nice things about Diana in interviews, and Diana continued to be impressed by his work, even though there was a lot of stress between them. Their relationship had always been stronger than it seemed. The love and respect they had for each other stayed strong even when they were quiet. They were just waiting for the right time to show it again. They didn't know that the ups and downs of life would soon bring them back together in ways they couldn't have imagined. Diana and Elton both went through big changes in the early 1990s. Diana's divorce was no longer a private matter. It was a public spectacle that was shown on the front pages of papers all over the world. It was hard for Elton to deal with his addiction problems and the responsibilities of his job. Even though they weren't close anymore, their lives continued to show that they were both strong. They each dealt with the constant pressures of fame and expectation in their own unique ways. The space between them felt like a hurt that wasn't being talked about. Elton had always admired Diana's bravery and kindness, and he felt sad that they no longer had a strong link. Diana also felt sad when she lost a friend who had been a rare escape from her crazy life. Still, the events that led to their split were not fully explained, creating an air of uncertainty that neither party was ready to face. Diana did a lot of good work for others, but she also started to find a new personality outside of the royal family. Her work to raise awareness about AIDS became even more well-known, and she made news for her kind actions, like hugging an AIDS patient while she was at the hospital. These actions challenged stigma and changed how people thought about the disease. This piece, which had always been important to Elton, made him think of the woman he had danced with years before. He admired her compassion and drive. They both cared about these issues, which showed an undeniable truth. Diana and Elton were similar. Even though they had disagreements and problems, they both knew what it was like to be misunderstood and to have people look at them closely while they tried to make a change. No matter how much their roots were alike, there was still a gap between them. Elton was always honest and not afraid of getting into a fight. He often thought about their friendship behind closed doors and wondered if they would ever be friends again. The first few years of the decade were hard for Diana because her split from Charles was public. She got even more media attention, and every detail of her personal life was shown to the public. This constant attention hurt her mental health and made her feel even more alone in the royal hospital, where she had been for a long time. In spite of all this trouble, she stayed true to her goal of using her fame for good, even though her personal problems got worse. Elton, on the other hand, was going through his own change. He began to rebuild his life with a new sense of purpose after taking steps to deal with his problems. His music kept moving people all over the world, and he became even more dedicated to helping others. When Elton John started the Elton John AIDS Foundation in 1992, it became a key part of his fight against the shame that surrounds the disease. His work was a lot like Diana's in many ways. They both tried to break social rules and bring attention to problems that were usually kept quiet. Even though they were no longer close, they still respected each other. Elton was touched by Diana's fearless way of breaking down barriers and kept up with her work from afar. Diana liked how determined Elton was and how he could use his fame to make things better. But their pride and the events that led to their fight kept them apart, and neither of them was ready to take the first step toward getting back together. The turning point happened in 1997 in terrible ways that neither of them could have imagined. Gianni Versace was a friend of both of them, and his death shocked and saddened them both. It showed how fragile life is. The fashion designer, who was friends with both Diana and Elton, brought them both a lot of joy and inspiration. His big personality mirrored Elton's, and his caring heart echoed Diana's. His sudden death brought them together for the first time in years, making them face both their sadness and the silence that had been between them. Diana and Elton were sitting next to each other at Versace's funeral in Milan. There wasn't much time to talk because of how serious the event was, but their shared sadness said a lot. During a quiet part of the service, Elton reached out and put his hand on Diana's. It was a small act, but it carried the weight of years of feelings that had not been spoken. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had shared and the pain of being apart. They talked for a short time after the service, their words mixed with sadness and happiness. Diana told Elton how sorry she was that they had grown apart, and he told her that their friendship had always been very important to him. It was a moment of peace that neither of them had planned for but that they both badly needed. Even though they were only together for a short time, it was enough to bring back the love and understanding that had always been a part of their relationship. They had no idea that this would be the last time they would get along again. A few weeks later, Diana's death in a terrible car accident in Paris shocked the whole world. People all over the world were shocked and saddened by the death of the woman who was known as the People's Princess. The news was terrible for Elton. The woman who had been an inspiration to him for years with her kindness and strength was no longer there. During the days after she died, Elton felt like he had lost everything. He had finally felt ready to move on after making amends with her, but losing her so suddenly made the pain even worse. While the world mourned, Elton was determined to honor Diana's memory in a way that reflected their deep friendship and the profound impact she had on so many lives. The days following her death were filled with sadness and shock. Elton himself was in disbelief. The world had lost one of its brightest lights, a woman whose kindness knew no boundaries. In his mind, he kept replaying their recent reunion at Gianni Versace's funeral. It had felt like a fresh start, a chance to reclaim what had been lost. Now, that chance was gone forever. The immense public grief that followed only deepened Elton's pain. Flowers, letters, and heartfelt tributes flooded through the gates of Kensington Palace in a display of mourning unlike anything seen before. People didn't just see Diana as a princess. They saw her as a symbol of humanity, a bridge between royalty and ordinary people. The things people said about Elton in relation to Diana were both comforting and painful. They reminded him of the way she had changed the world but also made him realize just how long she would be missed. As preparations for her funeral began, Elton was asked to do something deeply personal, to sing a tribute during the service. It was an honor, but also a tremendous emotional burden. It was a moment of immense importance, and Elton struggled to find the right words to capture his feelings. After discussing it with his longtime collaborator Bernie Taupin, they decided to rewrite Candle in the Wind, a song originally written in honor of Marilyn Monroe. The new version, Goodbye England's Rose, became a heartfelt tribute to Diana and an expression of the collective sorrow surrounding her passing. On the day of the service, Westminster Abbey was filled with dignitaries, celebrities, and members of the royal family, all gathered to mourn. As Elton sat at the piano, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on him. The first few notes of the song rang out in the silence, and his voice, filled with emotion, carried through the church. The words, "Goodbye England's Rose, may you ever grow in our hearts," resonated deeply with everyone present. It was more than just music. It was a moment of collective healing, an outpouring of love, loss, and remembrance. For Elton, the performance was not just an honor but a deeply personal goodbye to a friend who had meant so much to him. When the last notes faded, the quiet but sincere applause reflected the immense grief felt by all who had been touched by Diana's life. Outside, thousands gathered to watch the service on television screens, their tears reflecting how deeply connected they felt to the woman being honored. Candle in the Wind 1997 became one of the best-selling songs of all time, with all proceeds going to Diana's charities. Its success was a bittersweet reminder of how much she had meant to the world. But for Elton, the song was never about the recognition. It was about honoring a woman who had used her fame to shine a light on the world's darkest places. This was his way of ensuring her legacy endured. In the months that followed, Elton found himself reflecting more and more on his friendship with Diana. Remembering their shared laughter, their open conversations, and their mutual understanding of the pressures they faced was both comforting and painful. In public, he spoke often about Diana, not just as a princess but as a compassionate, misunderstood individual. Through these reflections, he realized that his role was not only to grieve her loss but also to ensure that her legacy lived on. Diana's death changed Elton in many ways. It strengthened his commitment to the causes they had both championed, particularly AIDS awareness. Through the Elton John AIDS Foundation, he continued pushing for greater understanding and compassion, drawing inspiration from Diana's fearless advocacy. He believed that her work had broken down barriers and challenged societal norms, and he was determined to carry that mission forward. While Elton found solace in keeping Diana's memory alive, his relationship with the royal family became more strained over time. The monarchy valued discretion, whereas Elton's openness and willingness to address uncomfortable truths often clashed with this approach. In interviews, he subtly alluded to the pressures Diana had faced within the royal family, describing her as being caught in a system that didn't allow her to thrive. Though well-intentioned, these remarks only heightened tensions, particularly with Prince Charles. Despite the tensions, Elton remained devoted to Diana's sons, William and Harry, offering them guidance and support as they navigated life without their mother. His bond with Harry, in particular, grew stronger over the years. In Harry, Elton saw echoes of Diana's rebellious spirit and deep compassion. As Harry and Meghan Markle faced their own struggles within the royal family, Elton emerged as one of their most vocal supporters, standing by them as they sought to carve their own path. Protecting Harry and Meghan was more than just a gesture of loyalty for Elton. It was a way to uphold Diana's values. He saw in their journey a reflection of Diana's own struggles, her relentless pursuit of authenticity despite the obstacles she faced. This connection fueled his determination to speak out, even when it meant challenging the very institution that had once shaped Diana's life. Diana had been a part of Elton's life for years, and as time went by, he still thought about what he had learned from her. She taught him how important it is to care about others, use your voice to make a difference, and stay true to yourself when things get hard. Some of the most important lessons he learned from her shaped not only his activism but also his music and his relationships. Even though Diana's death hurt Elton deeply, he found comfort in the fact that her influence would live on forever. Diana's spirit continued to exist in the world through the causes she fought for, the people she helped, and the memories she left behind. For Elton, making sure that Diana's legacy endured was not only his duty but also his honor. In the years following Diana's death, Elton remained a steadfast guardian of her memory. Even as time passed, he wouldn't allow her story to become a sanitized version of history. Princess Diana was more than just a name to him. She was a friend who had endured unimaginable hardships with kindness and grace. His main goal was for everyone to remember her for her kindness, which was her greatest strength. When Elton reflected on their friendship, he often gained a deeper understanding of the immense pressures Diana had faced. He was honest about how she had felt alone within the royal family and how that isolation affected her mental health. These thoughts were not intended to attack the government but rather to highlight the personal cost of living under such rigid expectations. Diana was a woman torn between duty and self-expression, and the struggle to reconcile those two aspects of her life had a profound and tragic impact on her. As Elton shared more about their friendship, people began to see Diana in a new light. She was no longer just a beautiful icon gracing magazine covers. She was a symbol of strength who had channeled her pain into helping others and making a difference. His words helped to humanize her memory, revealing the woman behind the crown and the myths. However, while many praised Elton for his honesty, his candid remarks were also met with criticism. His comments about the role of the royal family in Diana's struggles stirred controversy, particularly with Prince Charles. Although Elton never explicitly blamed Charles for Diana's unhappiness, his sharp criticisms of the rigid royal lifestyle made it clear how he felt. Speaking out was never about creating division or resentment. For Elton, it was about honoring the truth and ensuring that Diana's memory remained authentic. As time went on, Elton's support for Diana's son, Prince Harry, and his wife Meghan further widened the gap between him and the royal family. When the couple faced backlash for stepping down from their royal duties, Elton publicly defended them, drawing parallels to Diana's own struggles. He believed their journey reflected the same courage and determination that had defined Diana's life. His decision to stand by them was not just a gesture of loyalty but also a way to uphold Diana's values of kindness and honesty. The bond between Elton and Harry, in particular, became a source of comfort for both of them. The younger prince often turned to Elton for guidance, seeking advice on how to navigate the pressures of public life. Elton had a unique perspective, having witnessed firsthand how Diana had dealt with similar challenges. Their friendship served as a reminder that Diana's spirit lived on, continuing to shape the lives of those she loved. Despite the growing divide between him and the royal establishment, Elton remained unwavering in his commitment to honoring Diana's memory and supporting her sons. For him, the most important thing was to tell her story honestly and ensure that her ideals continued to inspire people. Toward the later years of his life, Elton often reflected on Diana and the invaluable lessons their friendship had taught him. She had shown him the power of deep human connection and the strength that comes from truly understanding and supporting others. These lessons became the foundation of his music, activism, and personal relationships. He carried Diana's spirit with him in everything he did, whether through his work or the way he engaged with people. Candle in the Wind 1997 remained a powerful tribute to their bond, a song that immortalized Diana in the most public way possible. However, for Elton, the real honor lay in the quieter moments, the conversations they had, the laughter they shared, and the mutual understanding they offered one another. These memories were the heart of their friendship, and he cherished them above all else. As the world evolved, Diana's influence only grew stronger. People continued to be moved by her humanitarian efforts, her ability to connect with individuals from all walks of life, and her determination to challenge societal norms. Elton often imagined how proud she would have been to witness the progress that had been made: greater awareness about AIDS, increased acceptance of marginalized communities, and a world more open to compassion and change. He knew that Diana had played a pivotal role in these shifts, her bravery leaving an indelible mark on history. For Elton, Diana's story was a testament to the complexities of fame and the challenges of living in the public eye. But more than that, it was a reminder of the extraordinary power of kindness and empathy. Through her struggles and triumphs, Diana had left a legacy that continued to inspire generations. Even years after her passing, her presence was still felt, her lessons still resonating. Whenever Elton had a moment to himself, he often thought back to their very first dance at Prince Andrew's birthday party. It had been a spontaneous moment, yet it had sparked a friendship that would profoundly shape both of their lives. That moment, like so many others, remained etched in his memory, a symbol of the lasting impact Diana had on his life and the world. They had shared something that brought them comfort and joy. It was a reminder of how close they were and how it had helped them get through the hardest times. He knew that his friendship with Diana had been one of the best things in his life. When he thought back on it, what she taught him was how important it is to care about others, stand up for what you believe in, and be strong by being yourself. These lessons were what she left him, and he thought about them every day. Even as time went on and new generations learned about Diana's life, Elton always stood by her. He didn't talk about her as a saint or a distant figure. Instead, he spoke of her as a person, a friend who had dealt with huge problems with great grace. Elton didn't just want to remember her. He also wanted to make sure that her ideals would continue to shape the future. Diana left an indelible mark on the world she left behind. Her spirit was woven into its very structure. She would never really be gone as long as Elton was there to tell her story. Diana showed that being kind, caring, and honest could make a difference in the world through her life and impact, and Elton thought that was a truth that should be told over and over. That's the end of today's video. If you've made it this far, be sure to watch more videos on the channel.